So I recently purchased a rather large amount of used books from my local used bookstore. And in fact, I purchased so many that I believe this particular book haul will have to be a two-parter. So I guess I'll just get right into it here. And of course, most of pretty much, I say like 90% of these books are classics. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, because the classics section at my local used bookstore, they have a really big classics section. And not only that, but when it comes to these, they only range from like 25 cents to 50 cents. I think the highest is like a couple of bucks. So anyways, the first one I got is Moll Flanders by Daniel Defoe. And I've heard of this book before. I've read some pretty good reviews of it. But I gotta admit, I've never read it. I briefly, I read the synopsis on the back here, and then I read the introduction, and I skimmed through some other parts. It seemed pretty interesting. And I mean, I know Defoe is a pretty well-known writer, so yeah. And this was this copy was 25 cents. So next one I got is Johnny Got His Gun by Dalton Trumbo. And I've heard about this book, and again, I've read some really good reviews of it. I'm also familiar with the writer, Dalton Trumbo. I recently watched that movie about him in which the actor Bryan Cranston plays him. And it's really a well-made movie. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. I had no idea that he had written so many screenplays and scripts, and I mean so many. I mean, much of it he wrote under pseudonyms. Like, he used different names, and he never really got credit for it. He never got credit for everything that he wrote. I think not until he had already passed away, or just before he became ill. But this is another one that I've never read. So I figured, yeah, I should definitely read it sometime. This copy was also 25 cents. Next one is 2001: A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. And I gotta admit, even though I've seen the movie I don't know how many times, well over a dozen times. I've never read the book, and I feel kind of bad about that. I mean, me being a big sci-fi guy. So yeah, this was also 25 cents. Next one, Hard Times by Charles Dickens. I never read this either. I read, obviously, some of Dickens' other work, such as Great Expectations and David Copperfield. But I've yet to read this, so I got it. It was also only 25 cents. Next one, SlaughterhouseFive, Kurt Vonnegut. I have read this before, though. It's just I misplaced my copy. I had a different edition, and I know I misplaced it somewhere, but I mean, I saw this and it was only 25 cents, and I was like, hey, I don't want to drive myself crazy trying to find my copy. So if you haven't read this, I do highly recommend it. Next one, An American Dream by Norman Mailer. I'm familiar with, well, somewhat familiar with Norman Mailer, although I've never read any of his work. I mean, really, I've never read any of it. I especially wanted to read something. I wanted to read this one because there was a biography I read recently about Jack Kerouac. It was some time ago. Jack Kerouac, I guess, mentioned something about Norman Mailer. I forget exactly. It was Norman Mailer, Allen Ginsberg, or both. Well, I mean, all those guys used to hang out with each other at some point, even if it was only for a brief time. I know Norman Mailer did hang out with Allen Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac, at some point. So yeah, and I skimmed through this. It did seem interesting. This was also only 25 cents. Next one, The Moon is Down by John Steinbeck. I'd actually never even heard of this one. I mean, I'm familiar with Steinbeck's other work. I never heard of this one. Hopefully I can start this within the next week or so, because it is relatively short. This is also 25 cents. Next one is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. Or Nabokov. Of course, I'm familiar, I've heard of this story, and I've read a lot of good reviews of it. But actually, I've never read it. I've never read it even once. And yeah, I figured it was time for me to read it and make up my own mind about it. I mean, I know that, I guess, originally when it was published, it was considered to be pretty controversial, and I guess it kind of still is today, but not as much as back when it was first published. But, I mean, other than that, I don't know much more about it, but I'm sure a lot of you fellow booktubers know a little more than I do, so... This was also 25 cents. And last one is The Awakening and Selected Short Fiction by Kate Chopin. Sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. Okay, sorry about that. My phone kind of cut off there for a little bit. But yeah, so The Awakening is another one that I've heard a lot of good stuff about, but have yet to read. So I figured it's about time I read it. This is also only 25 cents. And so yeah, that'll do it for part 1 of this book haul. Stay tuned for part 2 coming up soon. In about, I'd say, I don't know, next couple of days or so. So yeah, thanks for watching. And until next time, as always, keep it real, keep on rocking, and peace.